It's Jefferson, climbs the ladder. Oh my goodness!
What is going on, everybody? Welcome in to another episode of the UFC Show here on the Run Pure Sports YouTube channel. We're talking UFC Fight Night 228 here on Saturday morning. I'm Draft joined today, as always, by JSU and Ricci. Let's throw it to you, JSU. We've got our fight starting here in, an hour and 26 minutes before lock. So kind of an up-to-lockish type show, breaking it all down. How you doing on this Saturday morning?
Yeah, doing good. I actually really like the early fights. I'm pretty pumped because it's more just like the wait on Saturday to get to the fights later, which to me, I kind of like that. We're starting this thing early. You wake up, make sure your lineups are all good. We'll, maybe take a few questions as we go. If you guys have some questions in the chat, we can always take them. But yeah, a little up to lock taste for UFC. I think it'll be a fun show.
I'm with you. Yeah, my preference is to gamble on sports all day long if I can, which today allows for. We got the UFC card, leads right into a pretty nice, early mid-afternoon baseball slate, and makes for a fun Saturday on it's a kind of a slow part of the sports schedule right now. So good to have some action all day long. Let's start over to you, Drew. How you doing on this Saturday morning?
Yeah, doing good, guys. Looking forward to a day slate for MMA. It's been a while, and it's always kind of fun. There's a little bit of – it's kind of fun when something sweats up to like midnight East Coast time. But I don't know, something about getting a lock in at noon or right before noon and having something to sweat through the afternoon is always fun. So, yeah, pretty decent card. Only one cancellation, so should be pretty fun to sweat.
Absolutely. We got 13 fights to talk about, so let's jump right into them. We got to make sure, obviously, we get through them all in the next hour or so. First fight on the card, I think, is going to be a popular one for DFS. It is Cody Brundage, minus 160 to minus 170 over Cedric Dumas. This fight favored heavily to finish inside the distance, under 2.5 rounds, is sitting at minus 455 JSU. So this one expected to be fast and furious to start off the card. I think, frankly, most people are probably going to go to one of the two fighters in this opening card. And sometimes we get a slow start to the event, right? Maybe you fade the first one, kind of ease into it. This one going to potentially decide early if your lineups are in contention or not. So Brundage, Dumas, what do you see here?
Yeah, what I see is two fighters that I don't really love and don't really love to back either because, first off, Cody Brundage, I can't get out some of these fights that he's had where, to me, it's just kind of low fight IQ in ways. I think he's, kind of bad in that for sure. 8,700, though, he does have the upside, and we see it with him, right? He can get knocked out. He can knock people out, though. He can knock people down. He knocked Tresean Gore down. After saying he was going to wrestle Tresean Gore to get him tired, he wrestled him for like a minute and then got tired himself from wrestling for like a minute in the first round and then decides to just stand and, throw and pretty much throw with him. And his hands were completely down. You could tell he was gassed, and he just ended up catching Gore and then dropping him, mounting him, and just pounding him until, they stopped the fight. So he has the power, of course. But where he, is better, of course, is the wrestling. And that's what he's going to do. If you watch a lot of his fights, within the first 30 seconds, he's rushing for that takedown. He's trying to grab on. He's powering forward, getting those guys towards the cage, and then he's getting them, down to the ground. The question is always his cardio, his fight IQ. Can he keep that up? And I think that's why for DFS, this is such a good fight is I do see one of these two guys finishing, whether it's Brundage. I think Brundage, if he wins, it's by submission. I think if he wins, he keeps him down there. He gets a submission at some point with Dumas. I think Dumas's path, though, is kind of withstanding that first round-ish of Brundage trying to wrestle him. And then in the second round, him kind of keeping it somehow on the feet because Brundage is a little more tired, and then Dumas can start to get his strikes in because I think on the feet it's a much closer fight for Dumas. And Dumas was a hype prospect coming in. If we forget, he was 8,800 that card when Josh Frem just dominated him. That's the problem, though. We saw Josh Frem dominate him on the ground. Off of his back, he doesn't have much. So that's why I'm saying if he can withstand Cody Brundage kind of tires himself out, doesn't finish him early, I think he has a better chance, later in the fight to get a finish here. So my pick is actually going to be Dumas, and I'm going to say he finishes this inside the distance knockout. But for DFS, I do think this is a fight that you want to have exposure to.
I think so too. I think if Brundage gets the job done, it could be an early finish or potentially multiple takedowns, like you suggested. I do think Brundage has a good chance to start off this fight well. Potentially a good live betting opportunity, maybe at the between rounds 1 and 2. If Brundage is able to get a couple takedowns, but can't hold him down, perhaps we see Dumas rally later in the fight. So I'll be looking at that while we watch this one. Let's throw it over to you, Drew. What do you see between Brundage and Dumas?
Yeah, both of these fighters are going to be ones you want to be overweight on, I think. I got Brundage around 30%, just under 30%, and Dumas around 15%. So, I mean, honestly, with the inside the distance numbers, I definitely want to be overweight on both sides. Dumas is interesting because he's got about a 7-inch reach advantage. So, honestly, if it can stay on the feet in round 1, he has a pretty good chance to finish. But, yeah, if it goes to the mat, Brundage is the clear-cut favorite, obviously, by submission. So, I think both fighters be overweight on. It's honestly a pretty good spot. 7,500 for Dumas. I like it. 8,700 for Brundage. A little bit over the field there is probably right where I'll be.
I hear you. That's Brundage and Dumas. We'll move on to the next fight on the card. This one is slightly favored to go the distance. Jamal Emmers and Jack Jenkins. It is Emmers sitting around minus 200 for this fight. JSE, let's throw it back to you. What do you see between Jenkins and Emmers?
Yeah, Jenkins, interesting. I think this fight is going to come down to two things here. If the fight goes to the mat, if Jenkins tries to wrestle, I think that's actually advantage Emmers. I think he's better on the ground. I think he's the better wrestler here. If this fight is standing, I think Jenkins has a better chance. So you're looking at 8,600 on DraftKings for Emmers, 7,600 for Jenkins. I'm fading Emmers in DraftKings. I think this fight does go to decision. So if I had to lean aside for DraftKings purposes, I would lean Jenkins just because he's $1,000 cheaper at 7,600. And I do think this fight is closer on the feet. So Emmers also has really good takedown defense. So I think Jenkins is going to really struggle like he did in his last fight, being able to get that fight down to the mat. I don't think he's going to be able to do that with Emmers here. So it's kind of going to come into what his game plan is. And if it stays on the feet, though, I do think it's a little closer. But I do see a decision here. I don't see a good scoring for DFS. So for me, this fight is going to be a fade. I'm picking Emmers by decision. That's what I got on the sheet right now. Over at Rumpier Sports, we got the playbook. And with the healthy, juicy write-ups by our guy Bobby, we also have each fight picked. And we got all of us on there. Drew's on there. DC's on there. Got Big T, myself, a bunch of guys. Easy Money from the chats in there. We got, a few other guys, Glock. So, you can see every single pick that we have, whether it's inside the distance or by decision. That's obviously, if you're a premium member, you can check it out. Use code SUMMER33. Get 33% off. But I think this is a decision fight that I don't really want to be a part of in DFS. So I'm out.
Yeah, 100% on all that stuff. Playbook, really like the new format. Bobby doing a great job with the write-ups, and I think it's fun for everyone to get all of our picks. Anthony G, no ownership numbers. Well, we've talked about one fight, and Drew gave us exact ownership numbers on both fighters. So we will be bringing the ownership numbers to the discussion, as we always do.
He will definitely give you the ownership numbers as we go.
Exactly.
Drew got ownership numbers on every fighter, so
does a great job with that. So no worries, Anthony G. We appreciate you being here. Let's go back to Drew. Ownership numbers, Emmers and Jenkins. What do you got?
Yeah, so let's start with the ownership numbers. I got Jenkins at about 16% and Emmers around 28%. So to be fair, to JSU's point, honestly, this fight doesn't seem too exciting. I'll probably X out Jenkins. I think both guys are going to be overowned based on the scoring potential for them in DFS. So I think Emmers, you can be a little bit underweight the field and be fine. I wouldn't X him out of your pool just from a winning, I guess if the rest of the card collapses, you could get at least a win out of him and it might be good enough. But yeah, Jenkins, dude, I could fade him in 150 entries and I wouldn't feel uncomfortable. But Emmers, I probably want to have some of. It just would be underweight, so probably 20% and cap it there. But 30% projected ownership for Emmers, coming underweight, and then Jenkins around 16%, which is ironic because he's projected higher owned than we just talked about Dumas. So yeah, there's your ownership for that fight.
All right. Anthony, I skipped past Andrew when he's talking. Okay. Seems like a bad idea, and you're not going to get your ownership numbers if you do. Anthony,
that's a poor idea if you're looking.
He doesn't even have my name numbers.
Right. Yeah, no, it's Drew.
This is just Drew. Yeah, I don't know.
Take a laugh and come back better. Come on now. Jenkins and
I will say though, Jenkins, in the chat, who said it? I think it was Jason. He does have really nasty leg kicks. That's why I'm saying though, if this stays standing, I think his kickboxing, I think that's where he might be closely lined or even advantage with those leg kicks. So that's where he would have the advantage. But again, if it stays standing, I think it's more still just a boring fight where they're just kind of trading. It's not going to be that much though for DFS. So he does have those nasty leg kicks though that, the calf kicks, we all know those things can be brutal sometimes. So.
Absolutely. Yeah. Sounds like we're all a little bit lower than the field on Emmers and Jenkins overall. Let's get to the next fight, a fight that I don't plan to be under the field on. It is Trevor Peek and making his UFC debut, Jose Mariscal. I probably butchered that one, but it is Peek who I think is both these fighters are interesting, but Peek has 8-0 in his MMA career, including 2-0, 1-0 officially in the UFC, 2 knockouts, including an impressive one last time out. I think he's finished all 8 of his professional opponents via knockout, which is pretty crazy for a 155er. But yeah, this fight, heavy favorite JSU to finish inside the distance, and I think we could see fireworks early in this one. I personally think this is a fight you want to have exposure to. What do you see between Peek and Mariscal?
Yeah, there's 2 fights on this card where I'm very, very overweight on just the fights in general. This is definitely one of them. This is a fight that you want to be in on, whether you lean the Peek side or the Mariscal side. That's, your choice. They're perfect for DFS, 8,200, 8K. They fit easily in your lineups. And we saw it with Peek. This dude's going to come forward. Listen, he can get taken down. I mean, that first round was crazy. He got taken down twice. Then, he knocks the dude down. He knocks the opponent down twice. And it's just he's running hammer fists. The guy is just rushing forward. He's not very technical, but he's got power, and he's going to make it a fun fight. That's just the way he fights. And honestly, I kind of see it with Mariscal where he's kind of similar. These guys, he's going to move forward. He's got a bunch of credentials. He can wrestle, he kickboxing. He's got BJJ. He can do a little of everything. And I think he's going to be willing to engage. And that's the thing that Peek does really well. He kind of wants it to be a firefight. He wants to try and get his opponent to engage with him. I think Mariscal will. And so that's where, for DFS, I can see definite fireworks here. And that's where at 8K and 8,200, I just don't know how you're not overweight on this fight in general. I have Peek at knockout here. That's my inside the distance here. I think this fight ends early either way, though. And again, for DFS, you want both sides here. So if you're on the Mariscal side or lean the Mariscal side, that's fine, because I think he's got a chance as well in this fight just because of how Peek fights and the way I think he's going to engage with Peek. Someone's going down here, fellas, and that's why you should have it for DFS.
Yeah, I'm totally on board. Drew, what do you have for ownership numbers for Peek and Mariscal?
Yeah, so I got Peek right around 33% and Mariscal at 24%. So Yeah, this is a great fight to target. I think Peak wins in round 2 by knockout. I think obviously at the prices 8,200 and 8,000, you're gonna want a piece of this just from a lineup construction standpoint. But the upside is definitely there. I mean, this is definitely going to finish, most likely going to finish. I should say. And what's really interesting is, so I take the juice out of the money line numbers, and Peak has the same inside the distance odds from a probability standpoint as his money line number. So like basically they're just planning on him finishing in some round. So yeah, I want to have both sides of this fight. I'll be more overweight on Peak, but I'll definitely be matching the field or overweight on Mariscal as well.
Sounds good. We'll move to the next fight on the card. I believe another UFC debut here for Joshua Van, who is sitting as a decent underdog, plus 175 or so against Zhumagulov, who I think he's 1-5 or 1-6 in his last 5 or 6 fights. Been a rough run for him, but he is a pretty decent favorite here. Interested to get your thoughts on this one, JSU. Zhumagulov, not a guy who's scored particularly well recently either, but he is a decent favorite, and I'm sure that'll cause him to get a fair amount of ownership. Your thoughts between these two, JSU?
It's interesting that you're interested on this breakdown, because this, to me, when I hear Zhalgas Zhumagulov, I am uninterested in watching a lot of his fights or anything he does.
Well, I'm fading this fight, but
but listen, he fights in a style that clearly the judges don't like. You can make the case that he's had a bad run, 1-4 in his last 5 with decisions, and some of those fights maybe he should have won. Went to the scorecards and, unfortunately didn't go his way. So you could say he's caught a bad break from that standpoint. Again, though, I think it's just his style. It's boring, right? He wants to hold you up against the cage. He wants to it just drag the fight.
Even if he had got the decision win in a couple of these, he still wouldn't have scored particularly well. It's part of my problem.
No, yeah, for sure. So for DFS, what you want, even though he will get some control time, you want takedowns, you want finishes, you want guys who's going to push high volume. He doesn't really do that very often. The one thing I will say about this fight in Joshua Van is I don't think Van is very good at all.
No.
And I think Zhumagulov is better almost everywhere this fight goes. I think whenever he wants to get takedowns, I think he's going to be able to get takedowns. I think he can win wherever this fight ends up going. And for me, the fact that he's went to the scorecards just recently so many times and had bad breaks, I think he does come in trying to push and finish this fight. I actually think Zhumagulov does get the finish inside the distance here. So that is my pick. Still for DFS, though, $9K. I'm not paying $9K for Zhalgas. But I will probably actually bet him inside the distance here, because I do think he does get the finish. It's just hard to trust him in your DFS lineups. But again, it's more just the volume and all that stuff, the way he fights, the style in which I just have a feeling he gets this finish here after so many bad breaks with decisions. So my pick is going to be Zhalgas. I think he's just better everywhere. I don't think Van's very good.
Yeah, I wonder if UFC kind of giving him a little bit of a cookie here after getting shafted by the judges, at least in one of those fights. I think it's argued too, but for sure one. Drew, let's throw it to you. Zhumagulov, Joshua Van, what do you see?
Yeah, I got both fighters right at 20%, so not going to be a super popular fight. It's really interesting looking through the numbers. So, like, for me, these guys would be like, obviously Van would be a no-go, and Zhumagulov would just be like a filler. He wouldn't be a priority for sure. And again, it would just have to be the rest of the card collapses is inside the distance number doesn't look good. So like to JSU's point, you could definitely get a good number on that. What's really interesting to me is Vegas has Van as a better inside the distance number through round 1 and round 2. He's slightly better than Zhumagulov, which is interesting. I won't have any of them, but I thought that was unique. I haven't seen that very often where a money line number is so low, but his inside the distance number through round 1 or round 2 is a little bit higher, which is ironic. So, 20% for both fighters. It's not a fight I want to target. 9K for Zhumagulov. If he finishes inside the distance, then that definitely helps. He'll be lower owned. But from what I can tell, it should be a lower scoring fight, and I don't really want to have too much of Zhumagulov. I won't have any of Van.
Makes sense. That's Zhumagulov and Joshua Van. Next fight on the card, we do go to the women's division. Tabitha Ricci, Jillian Robertson, two UFC veterans. This one a pretty closely lined fight. It is Ricci, who's a moderate favorite, sitting around minus 130 or so. We have seen Robertson, JSU, score pretty well in her wins. Does a lot of wrestling, gets some decent control time. Obviously, that's favorable to DFS scoring, and Ricci can kind of do the same thing. She's also a pretty good wrestler, likes to get the fight to the mat. So, yeah, I don't love this fight. I'm not particularly looking forward to watching it, but I think potentially the winner could score well here. Who's ever able to kind of impose their will with the wrestling, I think could have a chance. Should be a close one here, I think, between Robertson and Ricci. What do you see, JSU, between these two?
Yeah, the first thing that stood out to me in this fight is who Robertson has faced. Like, a lot of her wins that you see have been against non-wrestlers. And like you said, this is almost a clash of styles here where both girls want to get this down to the mat.
Yeah.
And a lot of her losses have been against wrestlers. If you look at it, I mean, it's just the way it's kind of gone with her fights here. Miranda Maverick lost. Like, you can see it as you go down just who she's fought recently. A lot of the people she's beat have been not wrestlers, and she's taken clear advantage of them for the most part. And I think Ricci's going to be the better fighter actually on the ground in top position. I think her offensive wrestling, getting it to the mat, I think she's going to be the one that gets on top. And even though Robertson is still dangerous off her back, Ricci is definitely more a position over submission or finish type. She's going to be in the right position. She's going to take her time. She's not going to get overly aggressive. So I don't think Robertson catches her, in anything. And I think she's smart. She keeps that top control, that pressure, and she moves through positions well. And I think in DFS, where she's priced, where both these girls are priced, whoever is offensive and in that top position, it could score well just because of control time, being in the right spot. I think Robertson, though, has a better chance of finishing the fight, though, if she does get in top. So for me, this is actually a fight that for DFS, I don't mind, because I think there's going to be a lot of, on the mat takedowns. I think Ricci gets them. I think she's the one that ends up on top, and she's the one that could score the best here in DFS. If she gets a good amount of control time, a couple takedowns, which I do see in this fight. So yeah, give me Ricci, who I think is just a better, offensive wrestler once it gets down to the mat. But Robertson's always live for a submission. Like that's what she does. So.
Yeah, I kind of like that call. I think this isn't one that you want to avoid, Drew, if you're having, if you're playing a lot of lineups like I know you do. Ownership numbers on these two, and where do you stand between Robertson and Ricci?
Yeah, I got ownership 23% for Ricci, 20% for Robertson. So all things considered, Robertson grades out a little bit better for me. At $7,900 versus the $8,300 price tag, it makes a little bit more sense for hand building lineup construction, single entry, and 3-max. Overall, I think the numbers have to, or the points have to come from takedowns and control time. So it's really whichever one takes control is the one that's going to score. To JSU's point, I lean Robertson. I think if I had to pick, if I was between, if I was on my fourth pick in a lineup, I would probably play Robertson over Ricci for a little bit of salary savings and hopefully the upside if she does get the flip with lower ownership. So yeah, it doesn't look like a super exciting fight, but at the prices, I lean Robertson slightly over Ricci, but I don't mind fading, or I don't mind including both of these fighters in your player pool.
Makes sense. We got a nice crew watching today. Big T in the chat calling you out, Drew. You need to get on the sheet and deliver the winners for the people one last spot.
I think Captain's got to give me the sheet. I don't know if I got it.
All right. Well, we'll get you in there next week. It's getting kind of close to the deadline here. We got AP in there. We got Matty Ice, Jason, all these cool people watching the show. So we appreciate you guys watching, and we'll keep it moving to the next fight on the card. It is Matuz, Rebecchi, and Loic Radzhabov. This one pretty closely lined as well. Rebecchi sitting around minus 130. And this one favored to go the distance as well. JSU, we'll go to you first. What do you see here?
Yeah, to another, fight where you got two guys who are relentless wrestlers, and they're just going to shoot. I mean, Rebecchi, I'll start with him, but 14-fight win streak. He wants to wrestle. He kind of blew his gas tank out in the first round last fight. He was throwing, and he throws with power. He kicks, punches, and he's pretty accurate in the beginning with that first round. Everything's with power, good body shots too, nice leg kicks. And the one thing I will say is he gassed out completely after that round where he was kind of throwing a little too much. You could see it, like the volume was up there, and he was gassed. He's a big guy. His arms, he was shaking his arms out constantly, which means like lactic acid built up. He was probably just getting really tight in his arms from throwing so much. And then what did he do in the second and third round where he was clearly gassed? He just wrestled. He found ways to just get the dude down, and his top pressure, he is really strong when he gets that guy on his back. He really doesn't try and like take the back as much. He just wants to get over you and just elbows, punches, and just stay on pressure wise. And he's a big guy. Radzhabov is a little different. He shot like 20 takedowns in his last fight. Another relentless wrestler, but the difference is he lets people back up. It's just Rebecchi. It's really tough, in my opinion, to get up when he gets on top of you. Radzhabov, you can get up. We saw it in the last fight where he had 11 takedowns out of like 20 attempts, but that was just because like he would take him down. He tried to take the guys back, or he tried to, get a submission. Guy would get back up. Like he's going to try and go for, submissions or stuff like that. And he'll lose position, let the guy back up, take him, dump him back down. You know what I mean? Go for it again. He wants to take the back. So it's different in the way they go about it, but they are both relentless wrestlers, and they both have power too. But the thing is, you're just going to get tired. So then it comes down to who has the better gas tank. And I think Radzhabov has the better gas tank. So the more this fight goes on, I think it favors Radzhabov here in this fight. I think early, though, Rebecchi is definitely dangerous because of how much power we have. And we saw Radzhabov in his last fight. He took some big shots, and he was hurt a few times where he just jumped at a leg and just single leg grabbed, like threw him down. But he was definitely hurt. Twice that happened where he just sprawled, grabbed the leg, and then ended up getting on top, take down, and got on top. But man, against Rebecchi, another wrestler, it's going to be a lot harder to do it against him. So I think this is a really close fight. The more the fight goes, though, I lean Radzhabov, and that's what I have in a decision win, Radzhabov. But good fight for DFS if one of these two can impose their wrestling.
Yeah, Radzhabov did miss weight in this one by, I think, just like a 1.25 pounds, not very much, which is a little bit concerning for a fight that could be exhausting. That probably means the weight cut didn't go super well. And, when you're that close, you're like cutting all the way up to the very end and you still can't quite get there. That is a little bit concerning. I still do like Radzhabov. I think he's one of the better dogs on this card, but thought I'd mention that for Radzhabov. A little bit concerned about that. Drew, what do you see between these two?
Yeah, I think this fight's going to be a little overowned, to be honest. I got Rebecchi at 30% and Radzhabov at 26%. So with that being said, at the prices, I just don't see me getting to these guys very much. Like JSU said, if the wrestling goes one way, then that's really the only way they can score. It's most likely going to go to decision. But I still think it's going to be an overowned fight at the price range. I think there's some better fighters cheaper cheaper than Rebecchi, or at least in the 8K range that you can go to. So I would at least be underweight on both fighters if you want to include them. But for me, they just wouldn't be a target in 3 max or single entry. So yeah, I don't know. I really don't see the submission route going great. So it would really have to be one fighter takes command in round 1 and then just takes it to the mat every round and racks up the takedowns and control time. So yeah, underweight fight for me. I think they'll be a little bit overowned based on the scoring.
All right. That is Radzhabov and Rebecchi. Next fight on the card, Randy Brown, Wellington Turman. It is Randy Brown, one of the bigger favorites on this card, mostly closely lined fights. Brown sitting around minus 240. This fight also a decent favorite to finish inside the distance, which I assume will make Randy Brown one of the more popular picks on this card. What do you see between Brown and Turman, JSU?
Yeah, Brown, tall, uses his range well, advantage. He's got the height advantage, jabs, kicks. He's going to stay on the outside. I think for DFS, 9,300. I think this is kind of a boring fight. I think Turman's a little more live too than maybe people give him credit for. So for me, it's dog or pass for DFS at 9,300 for Brown. I see it as a decision win though, regardless of if it goes Brown or Turman's way. I mean, Turman, he's got grappling. His striking, he's not very powerful, but I thought he looked better, at least in the last fight, in the striking department. So I think this fight, if Brown can kind of stay at range, I think it just ends up being a boring decision where he picks him apart. But again, for DFS, that probably doesn't score that great at 9,300. So again, that's why it's either dog or pass for me. Like, take a shot on the dog, hope he somehow gets the decision win. And at his price tag, what is he right now? Like 6,900. Like, who knows? You know what I mean? There's not a ton of really cheap dogs that, on this card where you feel probably very confident in. So he could be someone you just take and, in a decision, maybe gets lucky. But I do see a boring Randy Brown decision coming where he just stays on the outside, picks him apart.
Yeah, it makes sense. At that price point, if he does get the win, decent chance he gets there in the end on the winning lineup. Drew, sounds like JSU thinks Brown's going to be a little bit overowned. What do you have for the numbers here, and what side do you lean for Brown and Turman?
Yeah, I mean, it's arguable in the overown. He's going to be about 25%, 25 to 30, depending on the contest, and Turman around 12%. So I think Turman's your tournament play this week. 6,900 for him. Honestly, it's most likely going to go to decision. He's got about a 33% chance of winning via money line through decision. So I do like Turman as a nice tournament play. And at 12% ownership, he's also a great leverage spot. You could, be 15 or 20% in your player pool and be well overweight. And at 6,900 opens up quite a bit. So I don't hate Brown. I mean, it looks like he has a decent chance of still finishing in round 1 or round 2, like if things go his way via knockout. So I don't hate it at 25% ownership. But for me, Turman stands out quite a bit as a guy to save some salary, going to be super low owned, still has a reasonable chance of winning the fight through decision. So I do like Turman here. I still lean Randy Brown as the winner, but yeah, for tournaments, I'm going to have some good chunks of Turman.
Makes sense. I might have to get on a little bit of Turman myself based on your guys' analysis. I think that does make sense from a DFS perspective. Let's get to the next fight on the card, Neil Magny and Philip Rowe. It is Magny sitting around minus 175. To me, JSU, Magny is kind of like the gatekeeper a little bit in this division. Just not in my opinion, not a super exciting fighter. Grinds out wins. I kind of see that happening here, but this fight is one that I'm anticipating fading for the most part on my lineups. What do you see, Magny and Rowe?
Yeah, that's exactly what he is. He's the gatekeeper. Yeah. He's clearly fought. He's got way more fights, obviously, than Philip Rowe. He's fought better competition, 100%. But we know what Neil Magny is. You know what I mean?
Know exactly what you're going to get out of him every fight.
Yeah. He's a solid fighter, like DC. That's what he is. Philip Rowe's coming in, and he's had a few knockouts in a row. He does have the power to finish people, but man, Neil Magny, it's just, he is so hard. I don't see him coming in here and finishing him. I mean, Neil couldn't finish Neil Magny. Like, Jeff Neal's got all the power in the world, couldn't finish him. So I don't see it here, and I see a decision as well where I think Magny wins. I think it's not a fight for DFS. Unless Magny could somehow get just like a bunch of takedowns and rack them up, I don't think it's a fight that's going to score as well for DFS. So it's probably Magny or pass. Rowe, we've seen him get, knockouts and stuff like that. I just don't see him knocking out Neil Magny. I think Magny's too tough. And just fight I'm going to be under-owned on.
Same for me. What about you, Drew, on Magny and Rowe?
Yeah, I think Magny's the worst play on the slate. I got him around 25% ownership. Obviously not going to do much damage. Inside the distance numbers look completely gross. And so for that reason, I actually lean Rowe a good bit. I have him at 17%. And I don't know. Vegas gives some respect to submission for Rowe. So I do like Rowe here at 7,700. He grades out quite a bit better for Magny. Magny would be an X, and Rowe would be a little bit overweight the field for me, actually.
3 fades of Neil Magny, queue up 12 takedowns and 12 minutes of control time on his way to 140 DraftKings points. We'll get to the main card next. Before we do, just a reminder, please hit the like button. It does help us bring you guys these shows free of charge each and every week. Subscribe to the channel. You won't miss any of the content that we put out free every day here on the Run Pure Sports YouTube channel. And if you do want to join the winner's circle, coming off huge night for the crew in MLB DFS last night. Thank you, San Diego Padres. You can use promo code SUMMER33. We got baseball content all day. And, of course, you can get the Run Pure Sports playbook for MMA. Great job by Bobby. We got all the picks in there. Even Drew going to get his picks in there, we hope, before the fights start. So, yeah, summer code.
Don't switch over back to MMA from the MLB night last night, DC. You could talk a little more about the MLB night last night.
It was a good night. Boyd was on the nuts. I kind of rode with him. We were both on the Padres, had the pitchers right, and was a very fun night in the Discord. Yep. So awesome night of MLB action. And, hey, this is an MMA show, and people got to get in there. Still got 50 minutes before these fights lock. Plenty of time to get all the winners from the playbook, all that good stuff. So, yeah, summer code, promo code, SUMMER33. It's early here in Denver. All right, let's get to the next fight on the card. First fight on the main card, Bruno Silva, Brendan Allen. It is Allen sitting around -200. Fighter that does like to use his wrestling to some degree in this fight. Also favored to finish inside the distance. I think a much better fight for DFS, certainly than the Neil Magny, Philip Rowe fight that we just talked about. JSU, back to you. Brendan Allen, Bruno Silva, what do you see?
Yeah, Allen, solid, well-rounded fighter, definitely has good grappling when he gets down to the mat. His wrestling's okay, not that, fine, but he can get submissions. Like, he's going to look for submissions when he gets down there, and I honestly see, that's his path. Get it down there, submission. I think if Brendan Allen wins, it's by submission. And again, though, I think Silva is live for the knockout, though. Silva's got power. We've seen Allen and his chin can be questionable. Chris Curtis caught him. I mean, and we just watched the Chris Curtis fight recently. So he can be susceptible to those guys with those power shots who are just way in. And, Bruno Silva's definitely got the power to do it. So for DFS, I'm with you. This is a fight that's going to finish. You got a fighter in Allen. I think he's got a clear path here where he gets it to the ground, submissions, 9,100. And then you got Silva, who's coming off the knockout win against Tavares. I mean, that's his path, I think, with the power. So for me, 7,100 Silva, 9,100 Allen. I am going to be overweight on this fight. My pick is Allen by submission. But again, I think it's a good fight for DFS to be exposed to.
Yeah, completely agree with everything there. Drew, what do you see here?
Yeah, I love this fight. I got 27% ownership for Brendan Allen and Silva right around 17%. So my numbers suggest Allen a little bit overweight, and you can match the field on Silva and be pretty comfortable. So, yeah, I like both sides of this. 9,100 Allen grades out extremely well just from a raw projection. The inside the distance numbers, everything. So I definitely want to have, if I had a pick, obviously it would be Allen in any type of format. But Silva is certainly for GPPs. Actually, 7,100 for him. Grades out one of the best underdogs for me. So I like Silva here as a dog. I wouldn't match him up with who was that 2 fights ago at 6,900. But Brendan Allen would be my pick. I think 9,100 starting spot would be prime.
Turman, you talking about?
Turman, thank you. Yeah.
Turman, yeah.
Yeah, three for three on liking this fight and being on board with Brendan Allen. Next fight on the card is David Onama and Gabriel Santos. It is Santos, pretty big favorite, sitting around -230. This fight, slight favorite to finish inside the distance. A lot of, frankly, expected finishes on this card overall. Should be a fun one to watch. JSU, Santos, and Onama. What do you see here?
Yeah, I mean, what I see is a fight where you got a guy in Santos who is going to do something similar to what Nate Landwehr did against Onama, which I think is why the fight is lying this way. Santos is going to bring a lot of the similar things. He's going to come forward. He definitely, I think, can get this to the ground if he wants to go to the ground. I mean, this dude, his fight last time out against Murphy, I mean, he was throwing him to just single leg, just tossing Murphy to the ground. And it felt like it was whenever he wanted to do it, and he went away from it at some points of the fight. And I don't know if, he probably got a little tired in that second round. I remember it was the second round. The corner for Murphy was yelling, saying, he's tired, go. And then he kind of got kicked near the cup. The cup moved. They stopped the fight. The corner was pissed that they stopped the fight, gave him a second to kind of rest and recover. I do think that helped them because he's going to put pressure on. He's going to move forward. And Onama is dangerous. Onama has finishing ability. Everyone gives him crap about that Nate Landwehr fight, but he had Nate Landwehr twice in that first. The dude can get it done. He didn't, and then Nate Landwehr ended up overcoming and pushing it on him towards the end. But Onama is live and dangerous, especially early. I think if the fight goes to the ground, that's where Santos has the clear advantage. The question is, can Onama keep it on the feet? If he can keep it on the feet, this is a lot closer. Onama has dangerous striking and has the power to put people out. So for me, DFS, I think this is a great fight to target because if Santos wins, I think he's dominating him on the ground. I think that's how he wins. I think it's a bunch of takedowns. I think it's control time because David Onama is not easy to just put out, by the way. He's just not an easy finish. Yeah. Which honestly might mean he's controlling him for the entirety of the fight. He's taking him down constantly, which could score really well for DFS, as we know. But again, Onama at 7K, I think he also has the ability to finish here early. So fight I want to be heavily on. I'm going to go the dog here and Onama to finish inside the distance here. But great fight for DFS. You want both sides of this fight, in my opinion.
Yeah, makes sense. I'm right with you on that. Drew, what do you see, Onama, Santos?
Yeah, I got Santos around 30% owned and Onama at 20% owned. So ironically, a little bit higher owned than the last fight we just talked about. So they then grade out a little bit worse for me from a GPP aspect, but I think Santos is fine to target and probably match the field on. And Onama for me would just be underweight. So I do agree with JSU. Onama has some knockout appeal in round 1 or round 2. But Santos for me looks like the guy that's going to control the fight on the ground. And that would be my pick to win. And I'm updating the sheet as we speak, guys. But overall, this fight doesn't grade out great for me from a GBP. I kind of prioritize other fighters around each of those price points. But like JSU said, it's a fine fight to target. Santos can definitely rack up the control time, which is very possible. It looks like he's going to do that anyways. But he is going to be a little bit higher owned than some of the other fighters near him.
Yeah, I mean, Onama's takedown defense, this is why this fight's lined that way. Onama's takedown defense isn't very good, like Jason said in the chat, and Santos has the clear advantage. Just the question of, does he do it, or does he kind of gas from doing it, kind of like he did in the last fight, and then maybe Onama catches him, or whatever. But yeah, if he does that, then again, I think that's why this fight's so good, though. He can rack up points here. I'd prefer Santos over probably even, we talked about Allen, but I think Santos has a little more higher ceiling than Allen. I think he could score more in a 3-round decision if he's just controlling him the whole fight, which he could do.
Makes sense. We'll go to the next fight. 3 more fights to talk about. Our lone big boy fight, the heavyweights up next. Austin Lane, Justin Tafa. Both these guys obviously have big power. This fight, huge favorite to finish inside the distance. Neither of these fighters have attempted a takedown in their UFC careers. So we're going to see 2 big men slinging some leather, which is always fun. Always makes me nervous, JSU, if you've got a good sweat and you're not in on the, if you don't have a heavyweight fighter and they're just throwing and anyone could drop at any time. It could be a nail biter, but I like these fights. Fun to watch. This one could very well end very quickly. Justin Tafa, Austin Lane. What do you got here, JSU?
Well, the good thing about this fight is you're gonna kind of know early how your fight's going here, because Tafa, dude's got a friggin' chin, like absolute crazy chin, and he has power, great takedown defense. He's got strong legs. He's low to the ground, like all that stuff. He's really good there. So I don't see this fight going to the ground, which is perfect for Tafa because he wants it standing. And Austin Lane, I mean, he got knocked out by Greg Hardy. Do I have to say much more than that? I mean, Greg Hardy, we know he's got power, but he's not very good. I think Tafa finished this thing early. I think it's a first-round knockout. Lane's going to come in. I don't think he's going to be able to get this to the ground. And I think for that reason, I think Tafa has the clear advantage. To me, I'm going to be overweight on Tafa. I think it's a first-round finish here.
Yeah, I think one of these two is going down in the first round. Who do you have here, Drew?
Yeah, ownership-wise, Tafa at 34% and Lane at 13%. So arguably, I would say they're both under-owned, to be fair. At the price point, Lane would probably be a little bit expensive for his numbers, but inside the distance is good. But yeah, Tafa at 8,800, I think that's as good as it gets from a price standpoint. So Tafa is one of my highest-rated guys in the 8K range. I'll be well overweight the field, even at 34% ownership. And then Lane, I'll be overweight a little bit on Lane. He's only going to be 13% projected ownership. So you could be 15 or 20% and still feel pretty comfortable that you're not eating away a ton of lineups, given I'll be so overweight on Tafa. So yeah, Tafa definitely going to be higher owned, but he's well worth it. I'd be very comfortable playing him in every single lineup in a 3-entry.
I'm calling this right now. Lane is not going to be the next Pooh Bear. I'm throwing that out there. There's no shot. Tafa's chin, there's no way.
And listen. Yeah, I was going to pull up that comment as well. We all know from my Twitter wars, I'm not afraid to fight up a weight class or 7. But if I fought Tafa, I think I would literally probably die. So I can't agree with you there. Big T. We'll move to the next fight on the card. We go back to the women's division. Amanda Ribas, Macy Barber, two, I think, somewhat similar fighters. Both can wrestle, strike a little bit. Ribas has actually scored pretty well in her wins for the most part, and I've been a fan of her for the most part. So a decent fight here, JSC. What do you see, Ribas and Macy Barber?
Yeah, so for me, I think Ribas is better everywhere except for maybe like the boxing. I think Macy Barber has her there. But other than that, I think Ribas is just a little better wherever else this fight goes. She's not really like a technical striker either, but like grappling is better. She's good, pressure, everything like that. And I just think it's going to be a little tough for Macy Barber, who, let's be honest, we talked about Zalgis getting the good side of some of or bad side of some of the decisions.
Yeah.
Well, Macy Barber's got some really nice decision wins recently. So it's like the opposite here. But I think Ribas gets this done here. I think Macy Barber, I really don't like Macy Barber either. Like, I don't even like, she's fine, but like, I just think Ribas is better almost everywhere. So for me, if I see a fighter is just clearly better in most spots, I'm just going to go with it. And I'm not really a fan of Macy. For DFS, it's a fight. Even if Macy wins and it goes to the cards, she still doesn't really score that well. She is cheap. I just think there are better dogs, though. So I'm going to go with Ribas by decision. And that's where I'm going to probably fade Macy Barber.
Yeah, I'm on board with that. Drew, what do you see, Ribas and Barber?
Yeah, so Ribas is going to be at 25% owned, and Barber at 16% owned. So the exhale there is basically because 8,900 Ribas just doesn't do it for me. I think about, let's call it 35% of lineups are going to have exposure to this fight, and I'm pretty comfortable fading this fight all the way. They're both going to be, obviously Ribas, if the control time exists, which looks like it possibly could be there. But honestly, at 8,900, there's other fighters with similar ownership with as much or more upside, obviously. So I'm really not excited about Barber as a dog, and I'm not really excited about Ribas paying the price at 8,900. Even the submission numbers don't look great. So, unless she just sits on her, which I don't see that happening, is the only way she could really score enough to outpace the other fighters at the 9K, right around 9K. So, yeah, I think this fight will be a little bit over-owned. It'll be too over-owned for me, so I'll be a fade.
I hear you. Let's get to the main event of the evening. It is Ilia Topuria, who's been extremely impressive in his UFC career, 5-0, has finished his last 4 fights. Really, it's kind of run through all his opponents, frankly. JSU, he'll go up against Josh Emmett, who is a good fighter. I personally think Emmett's going to be overmatched in this one. I see Topuria getting the win. Only thing I'll say for DFS, as dominant as he's been, he hasn't had monster scores. He's not a guy who throws a ton of volume, and he doesn't utilize his wrestling all that much. So I think there's at least a path here where Topuria kind of gets an easy win, but maybe doesn't get to the optimal given the high price tag. I still want to play Topuria myself. I think the minus 340 that he's a favorite is honestly too light, the way I see it. But interested to hear your thoughts here between Topuria and Josh Emmett for the main event.
Yeah, I think Topuria, one of the things about him is he knows that like he can go for days. So like for him, it's almost like he'll just like be patient. He's very technical with the strike. He's really, really good with his striking too. And I think he's just so confident in it that he doesn't use his wrestling or, takedowns as much.
Emmett's like a big, looping overhand right guy. I just think he's going to get picked apart in this fight.
Which, again, though, like Emmett, I mean, he hurt Rodriguez. He can hurt people. He can put people's lights out, and we've seen Topuria get stung. I mean, against Jai Herbert, he took. Now, I will say he took I think it was a left kick or right kick to the head, drops, and then jumps on a leg. So he took it, ate it. He did fall down. I still call that eating it because then he jumps on a leg and he ends up getting on top of Jai Herbert. But he was definitely hurt there. We've seen him hurt at times, right? So it's not like he's invincible. It's not like he can't get hurt, whatever. But he's tough, man. He is absolutely tough. He's very technical. Emmett's no slouch, though. Emmett, they clearly want Topuria to win, but Emmett is still live here. Like he's got the power. He's got the overhand right, like DC said, where one or two of those connect, man. And, a lot of people's lights are going out. So that's just where 6,700, 9,500, at least you could see a path. Even if it's small, Emmett still has a chance here. I don't see it going to decision either, honestly. I think this fight finishes. I think it's either, Emmett gives him everything he has early, and then Topuria just wears on him until he finally gets the finish, which kind of the Bryce Mitchell fight last time, Mitchell took him down once or twice, but Topuria just kind of waited it out, got up, and eventually just weared on him enough and finished him, tapped him out, where it's just that's probably what I could see happening here, where Emmett's tough, man. He's gonna give him everything, but I think Topuria in the end finishes this fight by knockout. I think one of these dudes goes down, and I think it's Topuria in the end. He's just the better fighter overall, but that's no disrespect to Josh Emmett. Josh Emmett is a really good fighter.
Yeah, I think Emmett's path here is essentially a knockout. So if you are interested in betting the dog, you can get him in round 1 by knockout at 1,500, something like that for Josh Emmett, which I think is the best way or the most likely way he would pull off the upset. I would take that over just a straight win. But for DFS, Drew, what do you see between these two for the main event?
Yeah, Topuria, I got him at 42% and Emmett at 10%, one of the lowest owned main card fights we've seen for both fighters, to be fair. So yeah, Topuria grades out really well, obviously. Money line number, inside the distance, everything at his price and ownership. It checks out really, really well. Emmett's really not the worst dog. So honestly, at 10% owned, it's worth having a sprinkle at 6,700. Obviously I don't have him as my pick to win, but you guys are spot on. He has a relatively decent chance, all things considered, of winning via knockout in, I would say round 2, but round 1 for sure. He's got about a 10% chance in round 1. So Emmett at 6,700 is definitely worth a sprinkle, and Topuria is fine to prioritize, I think, in a lot of lineups. I think at 42% owned, you could be overweight the field and be pretty comfortable, because there's enough people around, you know, the high 8s and the low 9s. And then there's a couple good dogs that I talked about, or we talked about too. But yeah, I like both sides. I like Topuria obviously at the ownership, and then Emmett as just, you know, a sprinkle, and weird things have happened.
I definitely see this fight though. You could fade this fight, I think, at DFS, and I could see paths where, you know, neither. I mean, obviously, if Emmett wins, he's probably on the optimal if he wins at 6,700. Like if he finishes in any way, he's on. But like I could see paths where Topuria wins, but like DC said, maybe he doesn't do enough like volume wise, and he has just a decent score. But some of these other, you know, studs outscore him by a couple points, and he's not on the optimal. So there's definite paths. This isn't a fight where you have to lock, in my opinion.
Yeah, agreed. I mean,
this fight.
Topuria could get, you know, win comfortably and get 100 points. And if, you know, a couple of these favorites, Allen and Santos, get 115, Topuria is not going to get there. So I think if you're playing a bunch of lineups, you don't have to go to this fight if you don't want to. That'll do it. Thanks for tuning in, everybody. We got half an hour before lock. We do have the full playbook up with everybody's picks, the write-ups from Bobby H. You can get that still and finalize your lineups. Use promo code SUMMER33 for that. We'll, of course, have all the content coming for all the weekend with baseball, MMA, all that good stuff. Thanks for tuning in. As always, if you haven't done so yet, please do hit the like button on your way out. For Drew, for JSU, I'm DC. We'll check you next time.